Hey everyone, Eddie Campos here with Coffee with Eddie. I'm with Remax Preferred Associates, and my very special guest today is Sena Friedman, Director of Development and Communications with the Fair Housing Center. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Oh, I do. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about one of my favorite subjects. So.
Yeah, so, you and I started talking about this probably about 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. And it's in regards to the documentary that you created. I get the feeling this was like a passion project called Zip Code Matters. Is that right?
Definitely a passion project.
So you were kind of the writer, director. You oversaw this whole thing.
And I did that with the help of Will Lucas from Credio, as well as Erickson Blackney from Pinkerton Foundation. Erickson's tie to the Fair Housing Center is his mother was one of the original testers when the center was founded back in 1975, and she worked on some of the landmark cases that set precedent for law across the country.
So for people that haven't seen this yet, I watched it for the first time when it was on Facebook Live, I believe. Can you kind of give us an overview of what Zip Code Matters is all about?
Zip Code Matters, let's start with the intention of why it was such a passion for me. It matters, your neighborhood matters to where you grow up, because that's how you start to define what's available to you. What are your resources and what do you have? And I was in a conversation with a potential donor, and I had mentioned, at the end of the day, your neighborhood, your zip code matters. And they're like, Sena, really? Like, how can a zip code determine that? And I said, well, it's more important than your genetic code. Because what you have accessible to you quickly, easily, just, think about your own neighborhood within, let's say, 1 to 5 mile radius of where you live. What do you have available to you?
Right.
Grocery stores, transportation, your school system,
doctor's
offices, all these things play a role in your development as a person, and your life determinants are based upon basically your exposure to these resources. So I became passionate in trying to help people understand, if you grow up in an affluent neighborhood, it's hard to imagine having to take a bus to get to a doctor.
Right.
And if you grew up in a neighborhood where you took a bus to get to the doctor, right? It's hard to imagine having a doctor less than a mile from your home.
Exactly.
So I wanted to tell the story of how we got here, because we can fix this. We can change it. We can create neighborhoods that are well and resourced. And also, I wanted to be able to help people understand what disinvestment has done.
So let's talk about that for a second. So part of that disinvestment has been lack of awareness, lack of education. Where do you see that?
Well, I think that it starts when you watch the documentary, you quickly discover the role that the government played in creating the segregated living pattern. That
Redlining.
They redlined first before even the banks did, which caused the banks to redline. Because they wouldn't insure loans, and then that were for people of color. So when you realize that, and then you start seeing the way that it unfolded through a series of events. So first, we have to start with the fact that the government said we will not insure loans given to African Americans.
And this took place as far back as World War II, soldiers coming out of the war who had the accessibility to housing if they were white.
Right, if they were white. If they were black, they did not.
Yeah.
So they didn't qualify for VA loans. Well, let's just think about the ripple effect of that. There's the psychology of it. Like, I can go fight for this country, but I don't qualify for a VA loan.
Right.
So there's the psychology of it. And then there's the practical part of it, of like, where does generational wealth come from? It comes from home ownership. That's usually a person's largest purchase in their life, and it becomes something that you can use and leverage the equity to educate your children. You know, if everybody just takes a moment and thinks how they've used the equity in their home, how it helps you buy a bigger home. The next step is to go to a
Pay
bigger
for your
home.
kids' education.
Exactly.
So when we talk about that, just think about what's going on in real estate today. Not to focus on real estate, but think back in 2007 when the recession happened and values dropped an average of 30% or more in some neighborhoods.
Correct.
And now the trajectory is so great. Just a case in point, I just had a closing 2 months ago with a client. We bought his home 5 years ago for $59,000. We sold it for $127,000 just this past summer. Look at the amount of wealth that was developed there. And if that's not available to everybody, you know, he's in a point where he was able to use the value of that house to get into a bigger home because now he's married and he has 2 children. So it was able to do so many things to be able to create a better family for him, better opportunities for them. And, you know, that wouldn't have started if you wouldn't have bought that home and had the opportunity for that investment to grow.
No, it doesn't. And think about that, you know, Black home ownership is the same as it was, if not sunken a little below, back in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. Mm-hmm. So think about missing out on all that wealth opportunity. Mm-hmm. And what impact does that have? You know, and it's a negative impact. It's not a positive impact, that's for sure. So when you look at that and you say to yourself, how do we understand what happened, how it happened, what's the impact?
How do we learn from it?
How do we learn from it, and how do we fix it? Mm-hmm. That was the premise in which I approached Zip Code Matters, is to help everybody understand how we got here and to help people see that we can fix this. We can fix this. And in doing so, we're going to improve school systems. We can improve transportation opportunities that, you know, that it would be available. Health, food, fresh food. Mm-hmm. You know, food deserts, where are they? Well, they're in these redline neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. We can directly correlate the neighborhoods that have experienced disinvestment and food deserts and the lack of health care, all of it with redlining. If you take all those maps and you start layering on top of it, all at the root of it, the foundation of it, if you will, is redlining.